Families trust us. The only reason we have jobs is because they trust us enough to send their kids. They expect us to be the parents and be that supportive voice when they're not around. So showing up every day is just doing what you would do normally, caring about people and making sure that you're giving everything you can, because this is the next generation. If you're not, then we're letting them down. And there are plenty of people in our lives who have stepped up for us. Do the same for them.
Fire, earth, wind, water. This is the Elemental Educator. And now your host, Tyler Comeau.
Alchemists, welcome to another episode of the Elemental Educator Podcast. I'm your host, Tyler, and thank you so much for joining our community for another incredible connection. If you're here for the first time, welcome to a place where we redefine leadership and challenge the status quo. Take a minute before continuing the episode to subscribe to our YouTube at Elemental_Educator, where we upload all of our video episodes and additional leadership content meant for anyone looking to grow. For those returning alchemists, take some time to expand our community and share this platform with one other person today. I'm so thankful for your passion and dedication to being better together. Now get ready to let the alchemy of education ignite your passion for learning. Today, I'm thrilled to connect with Ty Arnold, driven by passion and a relentless pursuit of excellence. Ty is a visionary educator committed to creating equitable opportunities, fostering systemic growth, and empowering every learner to achieve success. Welcome to the Elemental Educator Podcast, Ty. It is a pleasure to have you here with us today.
Thank you for having me. Very humbled to be here and have a conversation with you guys in the learning community.
Awesome. And now, before I pressed record, we just had a conversation around what was the appropriate way, because your full name's Tyler. You wanted Ty. You walked me through a bit of a series of nicknames here. We've settled on Ty.
Mm-hmm.
Very different from me. You said in the workplace they call you Ty. Sometimes I get called T-Dog, and I don't know where it came from. I think I played tennis when I was growing up, and one of my coaches called me T-Dog, and I never thought it would stick. But then all of a sudden people started calling me it. And I somehow ended up in a school where they started calling me it, where it was never shared. So it's just interesting to me how two people with the same name can end up with totally different nicknames by the end of it as well.
I am embarrassed to say it. I didn't even bring this up before we started chatting. So, the Tyler was always what mom, dad called me when I got in trouble. It was Tyler, what are you doing?
Yeah.
And I was big into sports. Football was my thing. And at the time, wrestling was a big thing. If you remember Eddie Guerrero, his name was Latino Heat. So we used to have nicknames in the secondary, and mine became Latino Heat. And I'm embarrassed to say that was the nickname up until about senior year. And everyone's like, TA, because Tyler Arnold. So then it became TA for the longest time. So in college, it was TA. And then finally, when I started to get in the somewhat professional realm and teaching, it became Tyler, Mr. Arnold, and all those things. And then I finally achieved the doctorate, and it was kind of like, where'd I go from here? And I'm like, Ty is completely fine. It's short. People can remember it. And now it's like Mr. Tyler or Mr. Doctor. And it's just funny how, people run with it. But I love whatever nickname I give you is fine, or I get is great. So, but it is really interesting how the evolution of two people with the name Tyler, where we end up.
Exactly. And, that was kind of a bigger question, but let's get to the real big question here, which is, how did you get to where you are now?
I went on such a wild journey. College for me, I'll start right there. I was very much academic in high school. School came easy to me, and I had my choice of schools to go to thanks to athletics. Ended up at the College of Worcester, was going to be a history major, kind of do my thing from there. Not sure what I was going to do with a history major, but young and full of life. Ended up sports became kind of the driver. Ended up transferring out, going to OSU, doing a little time there. And I say time because I was a horrible student, struggled, couldn't handle the bigger atmosphere. My parents were worried, like, are you ever going to graduate? I think I changed my majors like 3 or 4 times, ended up on being a social worker. Wanted to give back to people, thought it would be a great way. My parents were like, okay, whatever you want to do. And I was like, I need to get back to a small learning community. It just wasn't for me. Went back to Worcester and had no clue, ended up in sociology. And months before I was about to graduate, I met my man Stan Hill from Earlham College, and he's like, hey, you might want to be a teacher. It seems like something you'd want to do. I had previously worked with Boys Village up in Worcester, which is a halfway program for young men who were incarcerated. And I got so much out of that. I was like, wow, I can have an influence on people's lives, even though they're close to my age. And I was like, okay, I got to go with it. And you can get a master's in 1 year. I was like, let's do it. found my love for education, spent a year in the classroom, which is completely different from most programs. And that was kind of the driving force there. Now, the funny thing was I was in middle school, ended up in high school because I swore I was going to be a middle school teacher, principal, and all these things. Ended up actually getting a job up in LaPorte, Indiana. But my girlfriend at the time was in Canton, Ohio. She was going to move to Columbus. We can make it work. We can make it work. I was like, I don't want to do that too. So I ended up going back to Columbus to be with her. Ended up working as an aide for about a year and a half, which that's very humbling work. And that's why I always make sure those people feel supported and loved, because they are truly the heartbeat of keeping our kids safe and making sure they get what they need. And I don't think they get what they deserve, especially pay wise. So after that, I ended up interviewing for a social studies position. And from there, I didn't get selected for that job, but the principal saw in me something different. She's like, you got to be a CBI. You got to be our CBI teacher, which is career-based intervention. Lo and behold, it was for students that were at risk. Oh my gosh, to this day, those are my kids. I've been to multiple weddings. One of the most humbling things I've ever had was at his wedding, he thanked two people. And I was one of those people that he said, you saved my life. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm not going to cry right now. That's not what we do because we're tough. But man, that one really got me. And so after that, I ended up being a CBI teacher for about 3 years. And then I transferred over. I was one of the founding members of what's called the Worthington Academy, which is an online format for kids who either just want to accelerate, maybe had some issues, or just need a different environment. Ended up working there for about a year and a half, and then got the opportunity to be a director of a very similar program in another community. All the time I'm thinking to myself, I have all of this non-traditional experience. I need to get a little traditional experience. So I ended up interviewing on vacation in Michigan for a assistant principal job down here in Cincinnati at Winton Woods High School. If you know anything about Winton Woods High School, amazing. They're also known for their amazing athletics. Football players out of the wazoo in the NFL. I mean, it's just an amazing community altogether. They've got the athletics, the academics, and the arts. They really pour into the kids, and I was like, I got to be there. So I ended up spending 3 years there as the assistant principal of the 9th and 10th grade, really with the 9th graders, which really opened my eyes because every year it was a new group, and it made me go, oh my gosh, this is crazy. Like being in this setting like that really made me want to continue to strive, and I ended up interviewing for a few positions as head principal and was lucky enough to land the job currently I'm at now for 4 years as the principal of Milford High School.
What a journey that's just rooted so heavily in something you believe in and something you value. And to hear the connection as to the why you got into the work that you're doing now and how it's actually led all of the decisions you've made to pursue career after that. So people oriented, service oriented, helping others oriented, right? So when the decision came to move and take a job somewhere else, or to move with your partner at the time somewhere else, that decision was hard because it was two different service decisions that you got pulled in two different directions. But you went with the one where the connection was closer to you. And even the position that you're in now, it's driven by a service position. And I'm a principal too right now. And being a principal is probably the most fun I've had in education so far. Going from, just being a student to being a student teacher to being a teacher to being an assistant principal to principal. We have a lot of fun in the job that we get to do because we actually get to provide the most service to the most people. And that's what drives, that's part of what drives me, is the relationships and connection. Now, before we dive into the heavy on this value that you have, I want to dive into our first segment of Grounded Moments.
3, 2, 1.
Rooted in wisdom, driven by purpose, welcome to Grounded Moments. And to build some momentum here, I want to start by asking you, what is one thing, Ty, that's grounding you in what you're doing now?
I always look to my family, my faith, and like you said, the relationship piece. It's humbling to do this work, as you said. And my work is always grounded in, can I do more for people? I think it's that attitude that I want to give the best experiences to my kids and my staff, and that always trying to find innovative ways, even if we don't have the funds, reaching and working with community partners to try and make it happen because our kids deserve it. And so from that perspective, it's always been driven by that relationship piece as well. I tweeted about it just a few weeks ago. I said that, when I interviewed for the initial job, I said I would be present, and that's been my word. I'm in the hallways, I'm on my rolling cart, my team follows suit, and we make ourselves visible. I'm at athletic events, I'm at band events, I'm at anything I can be at to make sure that kids feel supported, families see me, and they know that I'm approachable.
The fun part for me in a similar role is not telling people I'm the principal. I actually just tell people I'm in education when they ask what I do. The fun part for me is when you've worked really hard to have a community connection bridge into your school, and then to have that bridge actually be built and go through. And then you set something up that was new, creative, innovative for people. You get to be kind of the spearhead in starting that and taking that action and building the team around you that sees it through. That's the joy for it in me, which is exactly what you just shared. And it's so nice to hear somebody else with a similar mindset on that once you're able to bridge community and your workplace, it can actually become a really powerful place that makes it a lot of fun. Now, before the show, Ty, I asked you to share a quote that resonated with you. And you shared a quote from one of my favorite people, The Rock. And it's success isn't owned, it's rented, and rent is due every day. And I love the quote, by the way, but how did you find it and why did you pick it for the show?
Well, I've always been a weightlifter, and it's sports and things like that. I'm always striving to be better each and every day. And I know that if I'm not, waking up, and this is not a plug, this is more just I wake up at 4 a.m. because it's my clear time. But I also know that if I can get that win of getting up at 4 a.m., the day's already won. Everything after that is just icing on the cake. It goes into every aspect of my life. Being a father, being a husband, being an educator. Nobody owes you anything in this life. You have to work for it. And with that work comes a lot of positives. And when we start to get complacent, which I feel like sometimes we do in education, that's when kids suffer. And that's not fair at all, because they deserve us to be at our best every day. It may not be the best phrase, but I always say we're the best actors, because if we're having a bad day, our teachers can see it. Our students can see it. So I always try and put a smile on my face, ask them how they're doing. I always say I'm great, because you know what? Talking to the kids does make the day that much better. So I find that spark. But with the rent being due, it's just a great mindset. I think it just humbles me to remember that the world doesn't owe you anything. And at the end of the day, you work for what you have.
And on my end, some of the things that I do is after a difficult conversation, after a difficult thing that's happened, I think it's okay to take moments to yourself to collect so that you can then show up, right? Mm-hmm. So if I've had an intense meeting in my office and it was a doors closed meeting, which I hate doing, but I do for privacy and confidentiality reasons with people, when they leave, I'll keep my door closed for 2 to 3 minutes before just opening it and letting people come on in and have more chats, just so that I have that moment to say, have your moment and then table it and we'll move on, right? So that's exactly what you're going for here. And kudos to you for waking up that early. I tried that for a bit. That's a hard thing to do. I think I'm a hard 6 a.m.er, and that's where I have to draw the line for me. And it is important, though, to be regimented in that and to establish a routine for it. So how does this idea of, the world doesn't owe you anything show up for you in your workflow?
When I think about it, I think about, we're always striving to be better. Like when we're talking about education, if every kid isn't getting what they need, then we're not serving every kid. So it's always trying to find ways and be better for those kids. One thing that I'm really proud of, last year we started this thing called Eagle Evolution. We asked our entire school, what would you do to make our school better? And the ideas that came out of it, it's almost like a Shark Tank idea. The ideas that came out of it, some were simple. Some we had to ask the kid, come in, present, let's talk through this, so see if we can make it happen. We had some community partners that loved the ideas and helped us get some off the ground. We made some artwork changes. We made some changes to some things to our bell schedule. And when I think of things like that, it's the voice that matters the most. The process, making people feel and understand that this is your education, and we want to make sure the place that you come to, you enjoy coming to each and every day.
How do you balance the line on that between what I would consider to be a ridiculous claim that somebody would want to do versus a logical claim? So, and I'll maybe try to give my best wild example to this, man. If I was in like grade 2 and I was told you could change anything that you want in the school, what would you change to make it better? I would say gym every day, man. We got to do gym every day. You got to drop all the other classes and we got to just be in the gym.
Well, I think it's a different conversation because I'm at a high school. But I did try to I sent emails to each and every person that put a suggestion in. I said, I love your idea. Maybe in the future we could think about this. If you want to talk more, my office door is always open, or where my rally cart's at in the center of Bauer Commons, because I want it to be something that I don't want to crush somebody's passion, but at the same time, I have to put limits on it. And I was realistic. I said, we're not going to be able to do potentially 90% of these things, but I want your voice to be heard because there's some good ideas. These kids live it, just like with the staff. They live it every day. I want to hear what you have to say because you could have that golden idea that helps our culture, that helps us reach that next level of greatness. So for me to stifle that would be unfair.
And that's the important part right there. And you said it yourself, giving people a voice, letting people feel heard. So even though you might not action every single thing that people say, you're going to let them know that you're at least going to consider every single thing they say.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And that's the important part of school council, of student council, of having conversations with people in difficult times, because they need to just sometimes feel heard, feel listened to. Most times people aren't looking for you to necessarily take an action. They're looking for you to empathize with them, right? To relate to them, to say, wow, that's a great idea. Or, man, that's really hard. I can't even imagine what you're going through. They're looking for you to have some kind of human connection to them. Now, we'll segue here a little bit, Ty. Have you heard of an elevator pitch before?
A little bit. If you want to give me an idea, I'd love to hear it.
Yeah. So think of like an infomercial where you get like 20 seconds of airtime to like sell the product, right? Think of like, oh man, like Slap Shop, or what's the one that they always slap onto the wall that's leaking? Flex tape, right? And they try to pitch it. Yeah, they try to pitch it to you really fast and get you hooked on it. You have a really good message here on, the world doesn't owe you anything. Rents do. Show up for people. I'm going to give you about 20 seconds to pitch why people need to action this in their lives.
All right. I think it comes down to a very simple thing. Families trust us. The only reason we have jobs is because they trust us enough to send their kids. They expect us to be the parents and be that supportive voice when they're not around. So showing up every day is just doing what you would do normally, caring about people and making sure that you're giving everything you can, because this is the next generation. If you're not, then we're letting them down. And there are plenty of people in our lives who have stepped up for us. Do the same for them.
I know you lied to me because that was a really good elevator pitch. So you hit that out of the park. That was awesome. That's gonna be a clip. That's probably gonna be the front segment of the show where I like to hook people in with a statement. That's so right. Trust is everything. People are trusting you with their families.
Yeah.
That's important. Not only that, not only if you're in education, if you're in any organization that works with people or has employees, right? They're trusting you for the time that they're with you. And if they're not trusting you, that's a big, serious red flag that your organization has to make some adjustments, or maybe you have to move in different directions. So thank you for sharing. And that does bring up our next segment, because sometimes trust can be broken and we have to face the adversity of it. So we're going to unpack that in Headwinds and Tailwinds. Through storms and surges, discover the lessons from Headwinds and Tailwinds, where we focus on the challenges that test us and the forces that help us move forward. So first, let's set the stage here. Ty, can you share a time when you faced significant adversity?
Yeah, I mean, whenever you're in leadership, you're always going to face adversity because you give your wins to your people and the losses come back to you. I will mention a time, especially coming into the role that I am now. There was a situation where I had not locked down my social media and I had made some comments and posts that was not resonating with some of the folks in the community that I was coming to serve. Reflecting back, it was an opportunity for me to learn, and I share it with all of my students now in terms of being responsible, but I also share it with young educators just so they're aware. And I had to make sure that I was true and honest when I said that when I come into this position, nothing is going to be biased in what I do. I'm going to make sure my number one priority, as always, should be about making sure kids get what they need. And for 4 years now, well, 3.5, almost 4, I've kept to that word. My mission has always been to make sure I've been a strong representative for the district I serve, the field at which I'm in, and making sure that kids are my priority.
And I think it's really important to remember that people are humans and people make mistakes. And unless it's an extreme mistake that, just warrants you should never do something, I think everybody always has a chance for second opportunities on that.
Yeah.
And what I mean by that as well is, we give students grace all the time. Hey, you did it once. This is why that's a bad thing. I'm going to actually teach you why you shouldn't do it. And if you've learned why you shouldn't do it in the future, you shouldn't do it again. Right? That's the exact same thing that needs to happen with adults. Hey, you made a mistake. I'm going to teach you why you shouldn't do it again. And if it happens again, we start to tiptoe that line between if you're actually good at what you're doing. Right? So people are going to make mistakes. I make mistakes all the time, and I try to own them all the time as best as I can. And it comes down to, I need to learn something. And then let me show you I've learned it. Let me prove it to you that I've learned it. We're going to be upset in the moment that I made the mistake. That's just a fact. We're going to be upset. But in the future, that mistake should never happen again. At least for 10 years, and then I'll forget, and then it might happen.
Yeah,
I don't
exactly.
know. That's usually how it works. We relapse every now and then. Now, what was the turning point though? Because when that happened and you got, I'm going to use the words called out, I guess, for maybe what you were writing about. What was the turning point where things started to shift and it went from, oh man, I did something horrible, to, no, I'm going to just put my foot forward and go through with this?
I will be 100% honest, and only a few people know this. For 3 months, it was hard. I felt like the weight of the world was on my shoulders. I wasn't even sure if I was going to stick it out at the position I was in, just because I felt like the spotlight was on me. But always got to remember, with pressure comes diamonds. And so I was like, let's do it. I embraced it. And I will say, I almost took it to an extreme level. I was at every event. I was working 12 plus hours a day, which again, at the neglect of my family at points where my wife's like, hey, are you coming home? But I just wanted to set the tone. Like, I'm here. I'm a man of my word, and I'm a man of action. And I just wanted to prove that right off the bat. And so I found a healthier balance. I'm still probably work too much, but at the same time, it's just one of those things. Like, I was, when I was a captain, I was never the loud, boisterous person. I was more put my head down and I'm going to show you how it's done kind of person. So I just took that mentality and I've kept it to this day.
And with that, there's something to be said about work-life balance in there, because, and I hate getting asked that question when I interview, and I hate asking that question when I interview, is how do you manage your work-life balance? Because my answer is always, well, work-life balance isn't equal. It depends on the moment.
Yeah.
And if you make a mistake, you better believe that you have to shift that balance a little bit more to your work to recover from it. If I make a mistake at home, you bet I have to shift my balance a little bit to recover some things at home. So It's all about where you're going to allocate time, and your time gets allocated based where it needs to be. And usually it needs to be in a spot where you've made your most recent mistake. There's truth to it. And when you're able to do that, as long as it's not consistently making mistakes in one spot and dedicating time to that one spot, it usually tends to balance itself out and work itself out. And so I always answer work-life balance is actually, it's a give and take situation. So thank you for sharing. That's a very vulnerable thing to share. And I appreciate it. I know that the listeners will hear what's happened and resonate to it with some way, shape, or form. I know for me personally, I'm a hockey fan. And when those Winnipeg Jets lose, I want to go on there and just rip the coach, rip the players. What are you guys thinking? And I have to put myself back and I have to say, you know what? That's not right for me. I can't do that. It can't go out on social media.
Yeah.
Right. So you just have to remember, people are humans too, but hey, they're doing really good right now. I know for people that aren't hockey fans, you don't care. And for people that are hockey fans, you're probably not a Jets fan. So it's a little celebration for me. I get to stand and say, hey, we're number one in the league. So I'll take it.
Take it.
Now, with that, Ty, everyone needs that anchor to stay grounded during adversity. And it sounds like through this situation, you faced quite a bit of adversity. Mm-hmm. And looking back through it, as you went through those 3 months, what was wind at your back that helped you push through when you needed it the most?
I'm going to have to say my family, my wife in particular. We have a credo, hell or high water. When she goes through adversity, I'm her rock. And when I go through adversity, she's my rock. And humbly, she is my better half. And I will say that she never lost sight of what matters. She's like, go. She had the same mentality. Go in there and just show them who you really are. It's about the kids. It's making sure that you do your job. And I will continue to praise the work that she does, because she truly is keeping me going sometimes. And I hope I do the same for her.
People listening might not have that situation in their lives. So what's one thing they can do to keep moving forward with some wind at their back, despite storms they might be facing?
Find somebody you trust. It could be a teammate. I know when you get into the seat of administration, APs usually can kind of lean into each other. Sometimes when you're at the top, it can be a little lonely because you are facing a different challenge. It's finding those right connections, those support systems. I've been lucky enough. I've been connected with some really cool educators. We go out to breakfast sometimes. We go to local meetings together. So it's good to see them. And I have a lot of them on speed dial just to ask questions, because when I was new, I was like, I have no idea sometimes what I'm doing. So having that support system just to call every now and then and check in is great. And you got to do it the same. It's not just a I'm going to take kind of mentality. You got to give back. You always have to look for those younger administrators who I can pour into.
So I've had a few episodes here where everybody's talked about the principalship and they talk about it being lonely. And this will be the first time I think I do this on our show where I want to push back on that a little bit and challenge that status quo and say, if principalship is lonely, you're isolating yourself as a principal. You might be the only principal in your building, but you probably work in a school division that has at least 10 other principals that you can connect with, right? You probably have a community of people around you that aren't in your field, that aren't a principal that you can connect with. You probably have friends that are principals in divisions that are not your division that you can connect with. If the statement is it's lonely, that usually comes from you're alone at work, which means you're just staying in your office. You need to get out of your office. You need to get into classrooms. You need to go see kids. You need to go see people. So I love the statement, find people you trust. And when you find people you trust, you're going to start to realize that, you know, if you are in a position like a principalship, it's not as lonely as people say it is. Because I can guarantee you every decision that I've made, I have not made alone. I've had to make decisions where it's my decision at the end of the day, but it's definitely never been alone. It's always been in consultation with teachers, consultation with kids, consultation with support staff, consultation with my central office team or other principals in the division to get a big picture. And at the end of it, I walk away saying, hey, I'm going to make this decision. And I actually know how my community is going to respond. So I love that you shared that. It let me segue that, go on my little tangent there about the idea of lonely leadership. And that actually brings us to, now that we've talked about the adversity we face and we started to talk about how we go about changing that adversity, we're going to go into our next segment, which is ripples of change.
Awesome.
Small shifts, big waves. This is Ripples of Change, where we dive into the power of embracing change and making waves that last. So, Ty, what is a recent change that you've embraced or led?
So many. I think we're always evolving in, you know, our schedule. We don't have a traditional schedule. And I know a lot of schools, it's always goes through waves. Education goes through waves. So one that comes to mind was our bell schedule. We realized that I was at games and things like that. My APs were at games and events. And we noticed our athletes, especially on the varsity level, weren't getting done until 10:30 at night. That led us to think, well, how much time does that leave you to do homework? Think about staff. Think about mental health and the well-being of them. We're in a crisis right now where we don't have enough educators. If you look at the programs, there's not enough to fill the ones that are retiring. So when you have a traditional bell schedule, and there's nothing wrong with a traditional bell schedule, the problem becomes it almost feels like a rat race. Get your 45 minutes in. Hopefully you can get X, Y, and Z done. Move on to the next class. When you're teaching multiple subjects, you're having multiple things you're taking home with you as a student, as a staff member. So what we realized, we have to find a better way. We also have to think about what our kids are going into in the future. Not all kids are going to college. I am a huge proponent of apprenticeships in the military. But with that being said, we have to prepare them for life after our four walls. So we came up with the idea to go with a block schedule. And as you said, when we talk about making decisions, this was a decision that took, most research says it should take 2 years. We ended up speeding up the process to 1 year, and we've continued to grow through that process. And we ended up with a bell schedule that we had 4 block days and 1 traditional day. We have red, white, which is our school colors, and then black on Fridays, which is all 7 bells, so teachers can see all the kids. What we found is it gave us a better feel of the college-esque to prepare kids. You're not going to see your teachers every day in college, but at the same time, you have ample opportunities to get that enrichment. So we started off with 90-minute blocks. We're down to 80-minute blocks. The reason being, we got a lot of feedback from our students that they just needed some time to not decompress, but to start their day with a connection. And as we know, students who are connected are less likely to act out. And if you work after school or are part of a sports team, you can't be a part of a club, generally speaking. So that the start of the day for about 30 minutes, we have connection time, which allows our students, we call it Activate, opportunity to enrich themselves. They can be part of STUCO. All of our Fellowship of Christian Athletes meets then. We have over 32 clubs that can meet during that time. We also have just quiet study halls. If a kid ended up staying up late that night, go ahead. Here's some extra time for you. If you want to get with a teacher and do some arts and crafts, we have that available too. Now on our white days, we've actually built something called Flex. We know with our current bell schedule that if you miss a day, it can be hard to catch up. So flex is an opportunity where all of our teachers are available for enrichment and extensions, or remediations, excuse me. And it has gone wonderfully. It's been able to pull kids, hey, I'm going to give you this micro lesson so that you're prepared to come into class and you don't feel lost. Hey, oh, you missed a test, we can make it up right now. So we've really evolved our schedule, and it's not been just my voice. It's been our community's voice. It's also been our students and staff voice that have really played a role in where we're at right now. And it's going to probably evolve as we move forward.
This sounds like something that should be shared with a lot of people. And your flex day, that's your white day, I believe.
Our white day.
Similar to I think what we call high school redesign, which is the general idea that there's no set classes where it's direct instruction from a teacher. Kids are learning at their own pace, but teachers are available for you to pop in and get help when you need it. And you actually just pick where you need to go on that given time.
Mm-hmm.
I have no idea what this block idea looks like. Can you walk me through it?
Yeah, our blocks. So we have 7 blocks. That's why we had to create that flex bell as well, because that gives us an even amount. So on our red days, it is 1, 3, 5, 7. So students go to those bells. And then it's 2, flex, 4, 6 on the white days. And then as we said on Fridays, it's all 7 bells. So students get to see all of their teachers. And it was built in that way. Yes. And so what we talked about time. So when we surveyed our students and staff, we said is 90 minutes. Staff really said 90 minutes, we're losing them just a little bit. They're just not able to take that full time. So we said, let's walk it back 10 minutes. That's where that activate time comes from. With those 3 blocks, you take those 10 minutes and it gives kids a better opportunity to start their day in a much better mood. As you know, research shows, especially with high school kids, starting later is better for them. It gives them ample time to kind of get their brains acclimated. And what we've seen just in our initial survey with staff was kids are a lot more engaged. Also, we've removed cell phones. So we are a school. It's mandated that we work that process. So cell phones are no longer a thing in our classrooms, but our bell schedule has really been tailored to meet the needs of our staff and students.
And I don't know if you did this with intention, but you're actually pulling from Google's playbook here a little bit, because they give 20 minutes. I think it's every morning and afternoon. It might just be throughout the day, but they give time for their employees to work on passion projects. Mm-hmm. And like, that's the reason we have Gmail. That's the reason we have Google Maps, is those weren't Google initiatives. Those were people that worked for Google that said, man, I get 20 minutes to play. I'm going to go build this. And they went and built it. And now we have these incredible Gmails and Google Maps that we get to use. So by putting that flex into your day, you're actually opening up an opportunity for creativity within your kids, creativity within your teachers, which is very, very powerful. Now, you talked about how the research says this should take 2 years. You stretched it to 1. This is a difficult thing to just roll out. So what was the first step you took to try to make this stick?
Well, we had to get buy-in from teachers. That was the first thing. And we also had to listen. So there's been multiple surveys. As you said, you never do anything alone. And if you do, you're not in the job for very long. So we probably over-surveyed people to the max. And we actually gave multiple PD days for staff to build what they wanted. I think we had 4 or 5 iterations of different block schedules that we could look at. We took votes from both staff and students. And we asked our parents, like, what do you think? From there, we ended up with 2. And this is probably the funniest thing I've ever had. One of my math teachers, who's retired now, he looks at me and goes, you need to make the decision. Because we gave him ample voice. He's like, it's in your hands now, which I really appreciated. I think from that perspective, a veteran teacher who says, we trust you in the process, that was huge for me. From the kids' standpoint, God, I love our kids. I will say that they are so resilient. I'm sure yours are too. They just go with the flow. They are like... And they know that their voice is important, because we're going to ask them, how's it going for you? Like, there are surveys that go out and they give us their honest feedback, and we try and figure out how to adjust and pivot the best we can to make sure we meet their needs. But they are just so adaptable. Oh, what day is it? It's a red day. Cool. I know what teachers I go to. Oh, it's a white day. Cool. Oh no, we're going to have 3 black days in a row because there was a snow day. No problem. We got it. So kids are just so flexible and adaptable. And I think it's, for adults, it's harder than anything, but it's been great. And really, there's never been any pushback. It really comes down to, you have to be able to give the why behind it, and you have to listen to people. And if you do those 2 things, you're going to have a lot less of the grouchy people who go, well, I don't know what's going on. Why are we doing this? Because you answer their questions. And as long as you're willing to have those open door conversations and talk with people, we've never really had much pushback from it.
Which is great to hear because you rolled it out the right way. You put the feelers out there. You got a sense of what the entire group of stakeholders around you were feeling. And then you made small little incremental changes to start, and then you rolled it out, which is great to hear. That's the way it should be done. And you sold the why, which is really important for that. Now, people often worry, though, that change won't last. And something like adjusting a bell schedule, I mean, the next principal could roll in and flip it and do something different. What is something that you're doing with intention to try to make this a part of school culture so that when you're gone, your people that are still in the building know why they do this?
I think it always comes down to reflecting on it. I mean, as I said, it evolves each year with little things being added, like Activate was added this year. It's asking people, making sure they feel heard in the process at the end of the year, because it's at the start of the year, we both know people are in great spirits. We're excited to start the year. As you go through the year, you kind of go through the ebb and flow of how you feel. At the end of the year, it gives you that grand scope of being able to sit down and have that time to reflect and listen to the voices that are heard. And for us, it's just asking, did the bell schedule meet the needs of what you expected from this high school? And thank goodness for the last 3 years, we've made the commitment to do that because we've found that it is meeting those needs. Kids feel prepared. It's asking the kids when they come back from their military, from their colleges, hey, did we prepare you? And I know there's far more things that go into that, but bell schedule is really important, especially if you're going to the college level. That's one of the biggest struggles is time management for students when they go to that next level. And the bell schedule that we created truly hits that nail on the head. Like, you don't see your teachers, quote unquote, every day. You do in the hallways, but you don't see them every day. You are accountable for work that needs to be done. If it's Monday, well, I'll see you on Wednesday. That's when the work's done. So we're adding in layers of responsibility and accountability that are paying dividends now and for their future careers.
And this is such a big, I'm going to call it a bold decision too, to go to this method, that it's actually going to be the perfect segue into our last elemental segment, which is Spark or Burn. Ignite your ideas, face the flames. This is Spark or Burn, where we talk about bold decisions, big risks, and the fires that either spark success or burn lessons into our memory. So, Ty, with this theme that we've been unpacking around, I'm going to call it a bigger version of high school redesign. Can you tell us about a time when you made a bold leadership decision and took a major risk, maybe beyond the timetable schedule?
We've done a lot of cool things. I'm going to actually go with it's going to be cliche, but our cell phone policy. We truly believed that I myself was addicted to my cell phone coming out of the pandemic. That was the way we stayed connected with our people because we couldn't see them every day. What we were seeing were students were just lacking engagement. Their writing was suffering because they had the tech speak. And it was just that lack of, I can look you in the face and say, hey, tell you how I'm feeling, what's going on, because we were so almost numb to it. We also talked to our community partners. That was one skill set. They said, your kids just don't have the audacity to be able to interview strong enough for us to sometimes hire them. So we took the bold step of trying to say, hey, look, we're getting rid of cell phones in the classroom. Smartwatches are limited because they can do things on those, and AirPods are out of your ears when you're in the building. Now, there's some times where kids can still use those. If, it's a study hall that allows it, cool. You've earned that time, great. Lunches, yeah, you can do it. But we've really made that push, and we actually started, as you said earlier, you never want to do an initiative that's so big, it's going to blow up in your face. If I tried to do this whole building and it went bad, there's a sour taste in people's mouths. So we are lucky enough, we have this thing called the NGC, which is our ninth grade community. They were 100% like, we support this, we want to run with it, let's see how it works. And they worked out all the kinks and errors for us. Now, we found some other ones, but they took it on 100% ownership. This is what's good about it. We had to do lunch detentions where we had to give up some of our lunches once in a while to make sure it was covered. And these are the results that we saw. Well, we just had a whole drove of spokespeople to go to the 10 through 12 side and say, listen, we did this amazing thing. Our kids are now, engaged more. Their academics are going up and their social skills are through the roof right now. Well, thank you. You just sold it for us. So we implemented a whole building. Last summer, our state mandated that you had to have a plan in place. But we laughed. We're like, we're ready to go. Like, we've done this. Like, this is not new. And I just wrote it up in a report to our board. This is the last group that has ever had cell phones in the high school. So from 7 through 12, they'll know nothing but your cell phone stays in your book bag unless it's used for a project. We have photography classes where they sometimes use them, but they know nothing but the expectation is that during academic time, it's academics. So I know it's not as bold as a lot of people think, but we had people who pushed back. We had community members who were concerned. How am I supposed to get a hold of my kid? Well, what are you going to do with their cell phones? And in the States, I don't know if you guys have it up there, but we have like the security pouches and all these other things. Well, I agree with that at an extent, but we also have to teach these young people how to use their devices properly. You've sat in a meeting and had to give the look to somebody who's sitting on their cell phone. No, this is, you need to put your cell phone away, flip it over, put it in your desk kind of thing. We have to teach our kids that because they're going to go off when they get done with their senior year and they have to know how to properly use their cell phone, or they're not going to have a job, or they're going to suffer the repercussions in a school setting where the professor calls them out. So us putting them in the baggies or whatever just wasn't ideal for us, but I digress.
I learned this from Dr. Greg Wells, who spoke to our school a while ago. And it's something that I took. I don't think everybody took, but it's something that I've been doing with intention all year. And it's whenever I have a meeting and whenever I have a class, I actually make a point of my devices being out and visible. And then before I start, I make sure that everybody sees that I've put them away. So if I have a meeting in my office, I actually make sure my computer's on. I make sure my phone's on my desk. And when somebody comes in to meet with me, a parent, I say, hey, thanks so much for coming in. Have a seat. They come have a seat. I say, hey, give me 1 sec. I just got to put my stuff away. And then I grab my phone. I put it in my drawer. I turn off my computer. I sit down. I face them. And it shows them that I'm prioritizing them. Right? I'm not looking back to see, hey, did I get an email? Did I get an email? Did I get an email? What's coming on? What's going through? Is my phone going off? Right? There's times where I go, hey, I have an emergency. I'm going to leave my phone on, but I'm going to put it over here. Right? And I just let them know that. And you set the precedent for it. In the province that I'm in, the province has banned cell phones in every school. So it's not even a school decision anymore. It's just not allowed. And divisions have actually been mandated to go into their firewalls, into their internet connections and block all of the social media websites. So kids can't even access it on their downtime in our school anymore, unless they're on their own data, which in my school, it's not a huge issue because I'm in a relatively small school. But in larger schools, there's not as much drama. There's nobody texting other people in the middle of the day trying to set up a fight or trying to get in an argument or say, why did you post this, or snapping something that's causing a stir, right? There's no more photos of teachers without context circulating, right? All of these things go away because we're actually protecting people by doing this. We're protecting our rights, right? It comes down to our right to feel safe and cared for at a school. And it can be a decision made that having a phone actually made people not feel safe and cared for. And I always responded with, well, my kid needs their phone. No, they don't. You call the school, I page them, they're down in 10 seconds.
Yeah.
Right. They'll be here just as quickly as they have to step out of the class to answer their phone. So, and I can probably get them a little bit faster if they're working. The teacher might not even let them look at their phone.
That's true. So, that's very true.
That's a big thing to unpack there, Ty. And what was at stake for you if this backfired and phones got a ton of pushback for you?
Well, you have to think about it. We had a group of, 2 or 3 groups of classes that cell phones were allowed. So there's always the fear. I hate to say the inmates revolting, but they could have revolted and said, no, I'm not putting my phone away. So you have classrooms full of kids who are, I'm not complying with this. Parents who, and not all parents do this. We no longer have the helicopter parents, the bulldozer parents who come in and say, no, my kid's going to have their phone. This is the expectation. We never had that. I think it comes down to the communication, though. We rolled this out literally starting the year before in May, right before the kids released. We said, this is the plan we're going with. We had a laundry list of expectations, what they weren't allowed to have. And it went out almost too much on a bi-weekly basis. This is a reminder, we're not having cell phones next year in the classroom, so be prepared. And it was almost like when we got to August, it was like clockwork. They knew. Now, kids are still going to try and push the boundaries, and that's why we have the detention process. But I will say we've had probably about 99% of parents, yeah, my kid deserves it. He knows the expectation. You don't have your cell phone during classroom time, he gets his detention.
Yeah.
And it's
And
been
that's what
great.
we see too.
It's been great. And I think that,
Yeah.
as long as you do it the right way, you don't do it, haphazardly and say, well, we're going to put this new mandate in, hope it works out, and don't give anybody time to really embrace it and understand the working behind it, you're going to have a lot less of that downfall or that
Yeah.
potential fall.
So cell phones aside, just ideas of bold decisions, they're intimidating. They can feel heavy, especially if you are doing them alone and you're not doing things with your team or using your team.
Yeah.
So what's some advice that you would give to the audience and the listeners here to help them make bold decisions or take a bigger risk?
I think you always have to. I met a wonderful CEO. My wife took me on a trip and I had the opportunity to meet this CEO. And she said, bake your ideas. Take an idea and take it to a team you trust and bake it with them before you roll it out to anybody, because they'll be your harshest critics because they know where you're trying to go, but they have their own thoughts on the process. Bold decisions don't happen in silos. Bold decisions happen when you take the greater landscape into perspective and try and make it work for what is most important. And what is that? Kids. If it's not helping kids, then it's probably not a bold idea that you need to put into place.
Absolutely. Ty, we're wrapping up our elemental segments here, and I go to our last segment, which I don't have an intro for yet, and it's kind of the running joke that I should probably make one. So my intro to this is we're getting into listener questions, where I've asked the audience through my social media, hey, I'm putting out, I've got a new guest coming on. What questions might you have for them? Here's who it is. So let's start to address some of these questions. And
Okay.
I think that the first person actually knew that you were going to be on the show because it's not really a question. It just says, TA, so glad to see you doing big things. Really proud of you. Keep up the great work. And it was sent anonymously, but I had to give you the shout out for it. So
Ooh.
somebody out there is happy to see you growing. I just wanted to share that with you.
Wow, TA.
Yeah, very, very cool.
Got
The
to be
next
a
one,
high school or college friend. That's interesting. I got to figure that one out.
yeah, somebody's tracking you down, especially to go with TA, which was
I know. That's what
I
I'm
was
saying.
like,
I'm like, you're going back in the past.
yeah. Yeah. So, okay, the next one is more generic, and it has to do with the idea. Well, I'll just read it. It says, "Hey, I'm just wondering, I'm trying to put out a change here. I'm not really sure who to address at the right times and when. I know that I need to ask people, but when should I ask the right people?" And I think, okay, so I think what they mean by this is whenever you have to do a change in an organization, you should ask stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
And, I'm interpreting this as, which one do you decide to ask first? And then which one do you decide to ask last?
I will say that I've been lucky enough to have a veteran group of teachers. I call them the Council of Veterans, who I trust and I run ideas through before anybody else. That my admin team's included on that, but they're just a group of folks who have lived it and have seen many administrators in our district. And so just giving them kind of first crack at it so that I value their input because they have been doing it for a while. But then I think I just go, like, if they're like, yeah, this is a great idea, put it out in the world, I kind of just drop it in segment, staff, students, and parents. And I just create like almost a universal way of getting it out. I'm big into Google Forms, trying to get that and just say, give me your feedback. I don't know if there's ever a right group to start with. I think it really depends on what you're trying to do. If it's something to do that impacts families, you got to probably start with them. If it impacts students, you want to get their voice involved. If it impacts staff, you want to do that. I've been lucky enough, my decisions have been pretty much big picture, so I'm able to reach out to the bigger community, and I hit all three of them. There's nothing wrong with getting input from all of them, because if their kid's going to be impacted, you want to know how parents are going to feel about it.
Yeah, I'm kind of similar. I'm going to come back to the start of our conversation. You go to your circle of trust, the people that you can work with, bounce it off them first. But another thing that I've done, and it works well, really, really well, and I get my feedback really quick from this. So it's a bit bolder. Most change can take off because it's coming from your ground roots, your grassroots. I go right to my kids, usually the first things, and I say, hey, I'm thinking of this. What do you think?
It's a good
And
one.
they'll instantly tell me, hey, I like it. I don't like it. If I'm not in a school setting, I'm going to, in terms of a hierarchical structure, I'm going to what I would consider my entry level people. And I'm saying, hey, I'm thinking of doing this. What do you think? Because if they buy in, then I know that I've got top and bottom buy-in.
It's true.
Right.
That's great.
And if I have top and bottom buy-in, we can start to sandwich into the middle, and I can start working down my chain and try to convince people why it's a great thing. They can start working up their chain to try to explain why it's a great thing. So I always try to go grassroots on that. Kids have helped me make a lot of decisions in my school by just exploring that and going, wow, if they hate this, their parents are going to really hate this. If they love this, their parents might not, but the kids can help me sell this to the parents. Right. So I flipped the script a little bit there.
I like that.
I appreciate the question. If you're the one listening that asked that, I hope that we addressed it for you in a way that you were hoping for. And if not, just reach out to me and I'll be sure to follow up with you in a deeper conversation. Well, Ty, it has been a pleasure connecting with you. And before we wrap up here, how can our audience connect with you more?
That is great. I've just gotten back into LinkedIn, which if you are a professional, we all know in the educational field, it's generally who you know because word of mouth spreads very quickly. I'm also on X, almost called it Twitter. I always forget my handle, so I apologize. Let me pull it up really quick. I'm sure you're going to post
and we'll throw all of it in the descriptions here.
Yes.
Too. Yeah.
Thank you. So that's going to be a huge help. I'm big on that. That's going to be huge for my educational outlooks and things like that. If you're looking for a workout junkie, you want to follow, that's my Instagram. I love the fact that I am a part of a group, so I'm going to give them a shout out. It's called Fit Leaders, and we all know that mental health and physical health are vital in this position. And so being a part of that group has really motivated me. It's people from across the country, actually across the globe, excuse me. I think we have a few people in Canada, and I know we have a few people over in England who are part of it. So just being connected there is truly important because they hold me accountable for what I eat and my workouts. So I appreciate them.
Thank you so much. And Alchemists, as we wrap up our episode, I just want to take a moment and share my appreciation for your listenership. Again, you're the reason that we have this show. You're the reason we're here. It's about creating a community where we come together to be better together. We come together to challenge the status quo and ignite the alchemy of our education. So to dive deeper, we do have a newsletter. Make sure you subscribe to it. It goes out monthly. We feature a guest every month, and I try to tie in scholarly, actionable insights to help prepare you to be your best leadership self. There's an in-depth analysis of each episode as well. Just reach out in our Instagram DMs for the link. And Ty, just thank you so very much again for taking time out of your schedule to connect, collaborate, and empower us all through your lived experiences.
Thank you so much for having me. Humbled to be here. And again, any questions, please reach out. I'm an open book. If it's schedule, if it's anything that I can help with, be a thought partner. Again, like you said, we don't do this alone. And I always want to help anybody I can through any thought process.
You've been listening to The Elemental Educator. We hope you've enjoyed the show. Make sure to like, rate, review, and subscribe. We'll be back soon, but in the meantime, find us on Instagram, Facebook, and X at Elemental Educator.